Welcome to the Maddie's Joy, an Angelman Journey podcast. I am your host, Adam Birchmeyer. We are back from our Thanksgiving break. This week, we are going to talk about the benefits of building a community. And I wanted to broach this topic because almost a year ago, so December 3rd, 2021, Maddie was diagnosed with Angelman syndrome. And at that time, I didn't feel a strong base of support around me. And fast forward a year later, and I am thankful for each and every single person in my life. So we'll talk about how I built that community around me and steps that you can take to build a community around you and your family. All right, welcome to the Maddie's Joy podcast. I hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving. For those of you who celebrated, Nicole and I drove across state. Maddie got to see all of her cousins, got to see her granny, her grandpa, her great grandpa. Overall, it was just a wonderful time with family. We got to eat some delicious food, got to watch some soccer, some football. It was just a jam-packed weekend, and I am glad to be back into the routine here. And this weekend just really got me thinking about where I was a year ago compared to where I am today. And it is a night and day difference. We were trying to figure out what was going on with Maddie. She had a lot of health complications. Personally, I was in a job where I had kind of reached my cap. There was no room for me to move forward. My child has these health complications, and I was really just lost. And I didn't really feel a strong base of support around me. And when I say that, it's not because there weren't people out there to support me. I just wasn't reaching out the way that I should. We all know how parenting and adulthood works. Sometimes those strong friendships that you have kind of get put on the back burner as you focus on your day to day. And fast forward to a year later, I'm in a wonderful new position now. Maddie's health condition, we know what she has, obviously. Name of the podcast, she has Angelman syndrome. But that's not all that she is. And over the holiday weekend, and I posted on maddiesjoy.com all the things that we're thankful for family-wise. And if I didn't name you, I apologize. Believe me, you are a major, major reason why our family is doing so well. But it really got me thinking too, what have I done differently between last year to this year? And it doesn't always have to be therapy, right? I did go see a therapist and work through some of my feelings, but there were things that I implemented that helped build this strong base of community around me. First and foremost, the Angelman syndrome community. It's fantastic. There's actually a men's group for those dads out there that don't know how to connect with other dads. It's the Dedicated Angelman Dudes Society. It's on Facebook. It's a Facebook group. Join that. There's monthly Zoom calls. But I want to focus away from Angelman syndrome. I've said this before. This diagnosis does not define my daughter. Maddie is not just Angelman syndrome. Angelman syndrome's just a piece of her story. And as a father, even though I do the blog and I do the podcast, sometimes I don't want to talk about Angelman syndrome. I don't want to talk about the health complications. I don't want to talk about the intensive therapies. Sometimes I just want an outlet to be myself. And the first thing that I did was I actually found a fulfilling job. Not that what I was doing previous to Maddie's diagnosis was unfulfilling. I had some great coworkers. It was a great nonprofit that I worked for. I just had lost, I lost my sense of direction. I was stuck in a position, well, not stuck, but I was in a position where there was no clear path for advancement. And I got complacent, and it helped because I could focus on Maddie. But I needed to focus internally. You've heard me say this a lot of times. You cannot help anyone else if you're not okay. It goes back to the whole, if the oxygen masks drop on the plane, there's a reason why they say to put yours on first before helping anybody else, because if you're incapacitated, you can't help anybody else out. So that was the first thing in my life when I sat and started to ponder, what could I change? It was really my job situation. I'm with a great company now, and it actually opened up a lot of doors to me within the community here where we live. I'm able to go out and talk to people day in, day out. I'm back in sales. One thing that I want to kind of bridge what I'm going to talk about next is something in networking called Giver's Gain. So I'm a part of a networking group. And the reason why that networking group works is because I'm constantly looking for opportunities for other people in that networking group to help them along in their business. And they're constantly looking to help me as well because they see me helping them and they just automatically want to help me. It's called the principle of giver's gain. The more that you give, the more that you receive back. And the more that you want to give back. So the more that you receive, you want to help that other person out. And that translates over to friendships. I was guilty, and I still am with some people, and I'm working on that, but I was guilty of, yeah, they're my friend. They're really good friends. I'll see them eventually, and not reaching out. And some of the reason why I didn't want to reach out was because I had so much going on at home that I didn't want to be a burden. I had a fantastic conversation with one of my friends that I spent a lot of time with growing up. And about a month or two ago, we ended up spending about 3 hours on the phone after everybody was asleep. His wife was asleep, and his children were asleep, and Maddie was down, and Nicole was down, and we just sat there and talked for 3 hours. And I made a decision to share just a little bit about Maddie. And the amazing thing was he ended up sharing with me some stuff that was going on with his children. And it was just really a unique bonding situation. I want you to think about if a friend approached you with an issue or a problem. Most of you out there would be there for your friend and share your experience if you went through something similar or if you had something going on. I think a lot of times I'm guilty of this. I just don't want to be a burden for anybody else. And when you flip the script, if you just think about if somebody else had a problem, you would want to be the person that they go to. And that was really kind of a mind shift for me. It was something clicked where I really figured out, okay, it's okay to share. And you don't even have to talk about Angelman syndrome. It could just be something that's going on within your work life or your personal life or whatever you have going on. When you share something like that, it actually builds a stronger bond because that person knows that you respect their opinion and that you trust them. I hear a lot from wives of children with angel or of wives, and their husband just goes, I have to stay strong for the family. And that was my mindset too. Okay, what's next? What's next? You have to take a second to decompress. And if talking about Angelman syndrome's not your thing, like it is kind of mine, I'm kind of growing into it, talk about something else. There's a lot of conversations that I have or activities that I do that are completely unrelated to Angelman syndrome. Like, I just got back from a soccer game tonight when I'm recording this. And that's just an hour where I can kind of clear my mind, play with a few guys that I know, and just take a step back. If you feel like you don't have time, that's because you're not making time for yourself. That's important. Make time for yourself. I talked about it in the first podcast that I did. Find that moment of clarity to recharge and reset. It's a little embarrassing going out there in an over 30 league. Definitely not in the shape that I'm used to, but find something that you enjoy. When I'm out networking with people, when I'm talking to people, I talk about Maddie. And I don't talk about Angelman syndrome all the time. I talk about my daughter. And that's a huge connector for me, is talking to other parents. And sometimes I open up about Maddie, sometimes I don't. You need to share, and it doesn't have to be in a blog. It doesn't need to be in a podcast. Open up in your own way with what you feel comfortable with, but you need one person. You need at least one person on your side. For me, I can kind of distract myself with the World Cup going on right now. Find what you enjoy, and if it's a night or two for an hour or two, if it's talking to a coworker, you need that outlet and you need to start building your community. I always talk about, well, not always talk about, but I talk about what a lonely feeling that diagnosis is. It's indescribable, but I'll try to describe it. It's kind of just like a pit in your stomach. But the further that you get away from that diagnosis state, the more that you realize that the diagnosis is just a small part of what your child is. And that's important to know because you still have to grow as a person. And if there's one thing that you take away from today's podcast, if there's somebody that you've been meaning to connect with, shoot them a text, give them a call. More often than not, they want to hear from you, and they're probably feeling the same way. I urge you to reconnect, to find your community again, and it could be new relationships as well. Here in Muskegon, I was actually invited to a dad's group on Saturday, and it's going to be the first time that they're hosting this event. But basically, it's just a group of dads getting together and giving each other support and fellowship and friendship. I don't think any of them there will have somebody who has a genetic syndrome, who's kind of neurodivergent. And I don't even know if I'm going to share about Maddie having Angelman syndrome. Sometimes it's just, hey, I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. She likes to pull hair. She likes to chew on things. Sometimes it's just about who your child is. Or it could just be about, the Big Ten championship game. It could be about USA playing the Netherlands. If you don't want to talk about Angelman syndrome or you don't feel comfortable talking about it, you don't have to talk about it. Open up at your own speed, but take that first step to open up, and you will be surprised at how much that is reciprocated, how much you'll gain in knowledge, and how much more that other person will open up to you. So if you take anything away from this podcast today, start to build your community. Start to find those friendships that will help you carry on through the difficult times and that will celebrate with you during the good times. Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast. I know it's a little bit different. It was just something that was weighing on my mind. Thank you to all of you who comment on Facebook, who read the blog, who listen to the podcast, who reach out to me through text, through phone calls, through email. You guys help me through the most difficult days, and you guys help me celebrate all the little wins and the big wins as well. I love you all, and until next time, have a wonderful day.